business-wise, how big is the World Cup?
So it's one of the two biggest sporting events on the planet. Summer Olympics and World Cup. These are the two granddaddies of all mega events. The audience for the World Cup final, that will be something like 5 to 10 times the size of the audience for the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl is by far the largest American sporting event. So we're talking about an order of magnitude bigger than the event that's by far the biggest American sporting event.
How much money are we talking about?
So for FIFA stands to make somewhere between $10 and $11 billion on this event. They're going to make a couple $1 billion selling tickets. We've probably heard about those sky-high ticket prices. They're going to make several billion more on media rights, and by several, I mean closer to $5-10 billion on media rights, plus other stuff like jersey sales, paraphernalia, sponsorship money, all of that sort of stuff.
Where does all that money go? Like, who's getting all this money?
Oh, there's one organization only who's getting that money, and that's FIFA.
So is FIFA a business? Is it an organization? Like, how does this kind of...
So basically, it's an organization that is designed to organize and promote and develop soccer in the world. Officially, it's a nonprofit. That can grate on some people. Again, this is a nonprofit making $11 billion a year with extremely high-paid executives. But the money that they generate, that which is not going to, gold-plated toilets in Switzerland at their world headquarters, it goes to a couple places. So it's going to go to pay the players. The players and the teams involved get very, very high payments associated with their participation. Some of it goes to actually organizing the event and paying for at least some of the costs associated with the event. And then the rest of it, FIFA collects and then distributes to about 230 different national soccer associations across the world.
Is this on the up and up? That this really kind of gets spread around, it really operates like a nonprofit, or is it a little bit like, here, you get this, I get all of this?
So FIFA has a reputation, and a well-earned reputation, of being wildly corrupt because of the money that was coming in would trickle down to these national associations, but the people who were in charge of those national associations, again, wildly corrupt. We have large numbers of people who were jailed at times. We have significant scandals associated with bribery, associated with who's going to be awarded World Cups, who's going to be awarded media contracts to broadcast games. Soccer is very, very dirty historically, and there's a question about whether it remains so.
I kind of put everything in numbers categories on a scale of like 1 to 10. So if 10 is the most corrupt that you can be, and 1 is you are an angel with no problems, FIFA used to kind of be what? They're now what?
So FIFA used to be an 8 or 9. I will hold back what I think they are now. I will say most of FIFA is not engaged in active FBI investigations like they were as recently as 5 years ago.
I don't think I'm going to ask this question very well, so give me some leeway on this. Is there something about soccer, about the World Cup, that makes it so uniquely profitable? Or if the NBA was this big, it would do the same thing. Or if football was this big, American football was this big, it would do the same thing. So is it the size, or is it the nature of the sport that contributes something special?
Yeah, so it's the nature of the sport. And what the nature of the sport is that soccer has been adopted as basically the number one sport that people follow in roughly 3/4 of the planet. There really are legitimately 150 countries where people care, and people care a lot. And even the United States, where it's not our number one sport, we still have 30 or 40 million people, including myself, who consider soccer their number one sport to watch. So that's what's great about it. And the other great thing is there's lots of countries that are good at it, right?
Is the way that they're doing it, having games in 16 different cities, is that going to make it more profitable, or will that take it away if you just had it in one place?
So this is actually going to make it a lot more profitable. And the reason for that is because you now have 16 times as much tourist infrastructure to host people coming in. And it also makes the cost lower because you don't have to build new stadiums, right? So if we wanted to do, like, for example, the entire World Cup in Connecticut, right, we would have to build 14 new stadiums. And, of course, that's exactly what happened in Qatar. I happen to be wearing a Qatar national team jersey right now. But that's what happened in Qatar. Qatar had no available space. They're roughly the same size as Connecticut, but with half the number of people and about a tenth the amount of infrastructure. And so that cost them like $300 billion in preparation costs, building all the tourist infrastructure, the transportation, the security, and, of course, the stadiums themselves. In the United States, we can spread this across 11 United States cities, 3 Mexican cities, 2 Canadian cities. You don't need to build new airports in any of these places because, you might not be able to handle all of the World Cup traffic, but you can handle 1/16 of the World Cup traffic. You might not be able to handle all of the tourists, but you can handle 1/16 of those tourists, which means that you can accommodate a lot more people. So it's a much better event from potential economic impact than, for example, the Olympics, that are much more expensive and are much more limited in the number of people who can actually go to the games because there's only so many people who can come to Paris or LA, but the number of people who can come to the United States, Canada, and Mexico combined is much, much higher.
Like, can this trickle down, right? So obviously the players are getting paid, the FIFA people are getting paid. Does the hot dog vendor outside of I live in Seattle, outside of the stadium, like, is this good for them too? Can this trickle down to everybody?
Okay, so this is where we get into the grander social numbers here. So let's be very clear. World Cup is spectacular for FIFA. For everyone else, it's a much, much closer question about whether this is a good event for you. So certainly you bring a bunch of new people into town, but you have to worry about 3 things when you're talking about economic impact. Thing number 1 is what's known as the substitution effect. And what the substitution effect is if a person in Seattle, where you are, or Boston, where I am, buys a World Cup ticket, that's an expensive ticket, right? You're starting at $300 or $400, and it's going up from there. That's money that's not available for you in Seattle to go spend on the Mariners because we've all got kind of a fixed entertainment budget, and your FIFA ticket's going to use up a lot of that. So that's number 1. Number 2 is crowding out. Seattle's a lovely place to be in June and July anyway, and your hotels would normally be full. And having the World Cup in town means that you're crowding out some of the economic activity that would normally happen. The tourists, your regular tourists who come to Seattle for the salmon, beer, and coffee are going to be crowded out by tourists who are coming to Seattle for the soccer. So you can't say all these soccer fans are good without also saying, well, but what about the activity that's not coming? What about the regular tourist? And then the last thing is a leakage. And a leakage happens when money gets spent in Seattle but doesn't stick. So FIFA, that $400 ticket you're buying, none of that's sticking in Seattle, right? If I was a regular tourist and went down to Pike Place Market, all those folks are local, and so all the money I spend there is going to stick. It's going to get spent and respent in the local economy. If I spend that money on World Cup tickets, that money immediately leaves the economy and never has a chance to benefit anyone in the city. So put all those together, and it's a much closer question about whether Seattle benefits in a huge way from the World Cup or not.
Yeah, and then when you have, like, okay, you've got traffic concerns, you've got to have police officers that are there, you have to have the infrastructure to support. Like, who pays for that stuff? Is FIFA paying for that? Or is no, Seattle, you're on the hook for that?
Oh, my sweet summer child, right? No, of course. Of course, FIFA wants to pass that on to other folks, right? So they want to be able to collect all of the money associated with the event and bring that to themselves, and then put the cost of hosting the event on other folks. Things like transportation, things like security, and this has been lots of concern, lots of debate about this. So, for example, here in Boston, the stadium, this is Gillette Stadium, although during the World Cup it's not Gillette Stadium, it's Boston Soccer Stadium, because FIFA does not want someone who has not paid FIFA licensing and sponsorship rights to get any sort of sponsorship boost from this. So it is not a Gillette Stadium, because that would support a non-FIFA sponsor. So at the Boston Soccer Stadium, which actually isn't in Boston, it's in Foxborough. That's a suburb about 25 miles southwest of downtown Boston. Tiny town. It's about 20,000 people in it. They said, well, it's on you guys for security, which is about an $8 million bill, they figured. And they said, look, we're a 20,000 person town. This would be like 35% of our total town budget for the year. We're not paying, and we're not going to let you have games here. We're not going to issue the license for you to have an event in town unless we see the money. And this was actually tiny town council in a little tiny town faced down FIFA and did it successfully, a lot more successfully than mayors of places like L.A. and New York have done, and got FIFA to cough up the security money. But in places like Boston and New York, FIFA's not paying anything for transportation, which has led the cities to charge outrageous prices for transportation to stadiums. But this has been a concern, and rightly so. I think most taxpayers say, look, you're making $10, $11 billion on this. Part of that, cost of doing business should be paying for the things you need to do business, like getting your customers to the event and making sure they're safe while they're there.
How has FIFA kind of gotten away with that in the past? Are they just such a big dog that they can just come in and this is what we want and you're giving it to us?
Well, right. So that's exactly right. They've got this one very unique thing, right? Like, a Target could never get away with this, right? And say, hey, do this for us or we're not coming to town. And then the town says, fine, we'll get a Walmart instead. I also think that FIFA's better at driving a hard bargain than individual cities who don't have World Cups in town every 4 years. So FIFA's much better at figuring out what kind of contract to stick folks with. But again, several American cities, Edmonton in Canada and Chicago actually both walked away from the World Cup saying, look, we don't want these events because we think it's going to be more hassle than it's worth.
Is there, though, an kind of intangible / effect that you can't calculate in the sense of like, okay, yeah, the numbers add up to this, but you're forgetting about the global recognition that Kansas City receives or Seattle receives from these events?
Here's the problem is, number one, if I just go visit London, right? And I say, oh, it was great. And I tell my friends when I get back, I'm like, oh, I saw the Crown Jewels and I saw a couple soccer games when I was there and the museums were super and went on a cruise on the Thames. Everything was lovely, right? And then people want to go to London in the future. On the other hand, if I go to the London Olympics, what I say is like, oh, it was awesome. I went to one of the soccer matches and it was like 5-4. It was the greatest match I ever saw. And then when we were going home from that, we actually met the Dutch handball team and we got autographs with all them. And then we went to the basketball final and we were actually there for the gold medal of gymnastics. It was fantastic. And when you go back and tell your friends, they say, oh, that sounds awesome. But they don't say, I want to go to London. They don't say, well, I want to go to Paris. They say, I want to go to the Olympics. And so the tourism effect doesn't help the city like Seattle or Kansas City. It makes people want to go to the next Olympics in L.A. or the next World Cup in Spain or Portugal. So your legacy tends to be a World Cup legacy rather than a tourism legacy for the folks there.
Yeah, I used to be a news reporter in Orlando, and Disney World is obviously there. And they would always say, like, no, people aren't coming to Orlando. They're going to Disney World.
So that's right. And so when we actually, so funny you bring up Orlando, we actually looked at economic impact of the 1994 World Cup. We actually could not identify any identifiable benefits from hosting World Cup games back in 1994, despite the fact this was the most successful World Cup in history.
Are you ready for some harder / listener submitted questions?
Fire away.
What city do you think is going to benefit the most? What city do you think is going to take a bath on this?
certainly the potential for benefiting a lot are cities like New York and LA. They could benefit a lot for a couple reasons. Number one, they have some of the real premier events, right? We got the final in New York. We got semifinals in LA. So those are the sort of things, I think semifinals in LA. Those are very premier games. Plus, both of those cities are so large that you can accommodate a crush of World Cup fans while also allowing your regular tourists to show up, right? So in New York, New York has well over 120,000 hotel rooms, right, kind of in central New York. That's enough to accommodate 30 or 40,000 hotel rooms going potentially to World Cup fans, while Broadway fans and Statue of Liberty fans and just cool restaurant fans are still able to come into the city at the same time. So you get all the benefits without a lot of the crowding out. So that's one that you might expect there. It's tempting to put Kansas City on the other side of that, saying, look, this is really all encompassing. It's the smallest of the American World Cup sites. And it's a site where really the World Cup is going to kind of take over the city, which means that all of the regular activity that was normally going to take place there is going to disappear.
Like, how do you think the current global environment and perception of the United States is going to affect this?
Yeah, so it's terrible, right? So really the way you make money from a mega event is by bringing people to your location who would not have otherwise been there. So that's how you make the money, right? A local going to an event is just spending money one place rather than another. That's that substitution effect I talked about. But where you can actually make money and what classifies something as a mega event is drawing people from outside the community in to spend their money. I think you should never feel bad for FIFA, but I do feel bad for them a little bit. They've just had an event in Qatar, which was plagued with all sorts of problems associated with human rights issues, associated with LGBTQ issues for fans that went over. They couldn't even sell beer at the stadiums, despite the fact that Budweiser is an official sponsor of the World Cup. So, and the one before that was in Russia, which was awarded to them before they had invaded Ukraine for the first time. So I think they were really excited about finally going to a conflict and controversy-free country. And then we get what is not at all a conflict or controversy-free country, right? So by making the United States less pleasant place to come, you reduce the number of people who are likely to be here, which you reduce the number of foreigners coming and depositing a bunch of money here. So we've flat out banned folks from places like Haiti and Iran. Even countries like Cape Verde, they're in the World Cup for the first time. To come as a tourist from Cape Verde for the World Cup, you can get a visa, no problem. But to bring your family of four, you have to put down a $60,000 returnable bond to come visit the World Cup. Can you imagine going on vacation, for example, to Cancun, and you say, hey, please come visit Cancun, but we want to make sure when your vacation's over that you leave. So to come for your Cancun vacation, you have to come up with $60,000 of cash that we will hold on to, and we promise to release to you in the end when you go back home. That would make Cancun a very undesirable place to travel, even if it has the best beaches or the best soccer. So this is wildly problematic. I don't think it's bad for the individual host cities, because I think what will happen is, at least in part, fans from other parts of the United States will come in and take those places that were going to be filled by international guests. So I think the host cities individually will be fine, but the United States as a whole is definitely going to lose out by the fact that I'm expecting a much, much lower number of international tourists for this than you might have expected a couple years ago.
If I held your kind of feet to the fire, could you put a percentage on it in terms of like, oh, it's going to be down 10%, 25%, 50%, or whatever?
I would not be surprised at all to see numbers 20 to 40% below what we would have expected otherwise.
Do you think, like with some cities kind of rebelling against this, you mentioned Chicago and Edmonton, do you think that we'll ever get to the point where cities are just saying, like, we're not going to do this. We're not hosting the Olympics. We're not hosting the World Cup? we're not going to do it.
Yeah, so that's actually already happened in the Olympics. In the bidding for the 2022 and 2024 Winter and Summer Olympics, both of those events started out with about 7 or 8 serious bidders. By the time they actually got done with the bidding, everyone had dropped out, except for 2 cases in each. In the Winter Olympics that eventually went to Beijing, mind you, a country that does not do winter sports, has never been a winter sports power, did not have a ski run anywhere close to the city, doesn't really have a lot of snow in the winter even. The reason Beijing got it is because the only other country that was left in the bidding was Almaty in Kazakhstan. When it came to 2024, same thing happened. Boston dropped out, Hamburg dropped out, Madrid dropped out, Bucharest dropped out. Again, city after city dropped out until only Paris and Los Angeles were remaining. And so they awarded 2024 to Paris. And at the same time, they did something they've never, ever done. They flat out gave the 2028 Olympics to LA without ever putting it out for bid, because they were worried that if they did, they might not get anyone to come up. And they basically said, hey, LA, you're already here. What would you say that we're leaning towards Paris, but would you be okay if we gave you 2028 just right now? And LA said yes, but again, never went up to bid because they were worried they weren't going to get enough bidders, or the bidders they were going to get were going to be like Dubai or going to be Saudi Arabia, places that they're uncomfortable making it so that you can only host the Olympics in places that taxpayers can't revolt about it, because of course, taxpayers don't really have a say in Beijing, in Moscow, in Riyadh.
What is the old saying though, right? You privatize profits, socialize losses.
And that's been my life for the last 25 years. We've seen this in stadium economics. We've seen this in mega event economics all the time. I will say that we do have some good economic evidence that hosting these events really is fun. It is a big party. People will enjoy it. So we do have some evidence that mega events like the World Cup make us happy. We just don't have a lot of evidence that they make us rich.